All right. So my name's Carly. I work here at Motivosity and help run our webinars and our demand and lead generation. Jesse and I both live and breathe in this employee experience world. And so I'm about to turn the time over to Jesse, who is our head of product, and is going to talk to you about how to get started with your employee experience journey, which we all know is a pretty hot topic this year. So we're really grateful that you are all here. And Jesse, I will turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Carly. And I really appreciate all of you attending our webinar today. As Carly said, this is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts at Motivosity. We think every day about how our customers, employees can have a better day at work. In fact, our company motto is that we help people be happier about being at work. And if the one thing has been certain throughout my career, it's the quality of the work environment and the quality of the employee experience had everything to do with how I thrived professionally. I spent my career in enterprise software at tech companies, and I'm really fortunate at Motivosity to be able to lead our strategic functions around product development and the ways in which we help our customers solve this critical problem of delivering a great employee experience. Today, I want to talk to you about how to get started yourself, regardless of where you are in your journey, and give you some practical tips for how to advance that journey and become a champion of the employee experience inside of your own organizations. One thing that we definitely know is that the pendulum on experiences swings back and forth, and we're living in an interesting time. It's ever since the pandemic, it feels like there's been a shift that some of the expectations, the social expectations of work and the world of work has changed. What employers offer and what they expect has changed, and what employees are looking for has changed. Some of it is generational, I'm sure. We see big differences in generational profiles in the surveys we do in terms of workplace expectations, but some of it is situational too. It's affected by technology, and it's affected by the way that the marketplace works. And more recently, it's been affected by inflation. So it's a dynamic and ever-changing environment. And I like the pendulum analogy because it's like you're constantly in search of, like, what's the target? What's the ideal target for delivering a great employee experience? But just like a pendulum swing, the goalposts move on that experience too. The world of work these days is pretty rough. These are some of the top line data points, but I'm sure you've experienced this as well. Workplace loneliness is up dramatically over the last couple of years, and there's no question that the pandemic drove a lot of that. But this statistic has remained stubbornly high, even as we've all, or many of us, have returned to the office, or we've adopted hybrid work schedules. People are reporting greater level of disconnection from their employees and from their employers than ever before. And a significant percentage of workers are disengaged as a result of that. When we look at long-term studies of employee engagement going back all the way to the 1970s, we can see that there was a period in the late 90s and early 2000s where overall, like at a macro level in the United States and in Canada, people were reporting greater levels of satisfaction at work. But the last few years have more than erased those gains. And we're back down to a place where only a third of workers are reporting that they feel engaged in their work. And at least in the United States, this has had a huge impact on productivity, and it's similar. It's similar in many places around the world. In an environment like that, it's easy to wonder if something is broken, something fundamental has broken. And I think we all sort of feel that sometimes. But I don't think that something has broken necessarily. It's just changing. The social contract between employees and employers has changed. And in some ways, it's changed irrevocably. There's a new expectation and a new dynamic here. And so in that environment, within each individual company, as business leaders, as HR professionals, it's incumbent upon us to find ways to reconnect and to repair. And it's going to be different for every business, what needs reconnecting or what needs repairing. But I think it's fair to say that this is something that all of us are facing right now and that we need solutions for. At Motivosity, the way that we reconnect and repair, and what we would recommend to you to do, is to focus on and upgrade your employee experience in a very purposeful, process-driven way. Before we move on, that category, employee experience, is pretty broad. So I want to do a quick poll and ask you, those of you that are here, how you would define employee experience in your organization. And we'll just take a minute here, maybe 30 seconds, to get your responses.
Yeah, don't be afraid. We want to hear from everyone.
Coworkers, okay, great. So within this group, and this is pretty common. There's two kind of broad ways that people think about employee experience. One is in a journey map sort of a way, where, like the game of life, that old board game, where you have a starting square and an ending square, and the start square is your hiring experience, and the ending square is your exit interview. That's a fair way to think about the different touch points. And one of the things I really like about that is that it places an emphasis on the moments that matter at work. The other common way that people think about employee experience is in a more intangible way, how a person feels at work. That's what we're saying there. I think that the way that they feel is really a reflection of the experience that's provided. So it's like a barometer for the quality of the experience. And the good news is there are ways to measure that. We're going to talk a little bit about that later in our presentation today. Let's move on to the next slide here. Over the last couple of years, as this category of employee experience has grown and grown, and there's been more focus on it, analysts and researchers have been trying to identify what are the capabilities or what are the key dimensions of a digital employee experience. That's so important in this new world where so many of us work remote or work hybrid. Employee experience used to be thought of as things largely having to do with the office space itself, the amenities and the physical building, the supplies, the benefits, things like crazy things in the tech world like nap pods and catering and on-site dry cleaning. In a digital world, we have to think about the employee experience differently. This is a lot of words here, so it helps me a little bit to reorganize it in a bulleted list here. But some of the elements here are really, really key, kind of the top line ones. One is that this experience needs to be really well integrated and personalized. Many of us are coming from an environment where our organizations have purchased many disconnected tools, and it's hard to create a cohesive employee experience when employees are jumping between so many tools. Other important elements of a great digital employee experience are easy access to company information, tools and resources for growing and developing, a way to align in terms of goals, and certainly, maybe even most importantly, a town square for praise and for culture development. These are essential elements of the experience that employees have at work that now in a digital world, they have to go online. Based on your organization and based on the fact that you're here, I hope that all of you are prioritizing employee experience. But I can imagine that the way that you think about it and perhaps the way your executive team thinks about it might be slightly different. So in this poll, I would love to hear from you on what does your executive team think and how do they prioritize the employee experience? Okay, good. And in this poll, which we've run many times in different groups, we tend to see something similar to this. In some groups, there's a larger percentage of attendees who report that their executive team has made employee experience their top priority. But in most organizations, they feel like the executive team is trying to balance delivering a great experience with the other competing interests that they have as a business. First off, taking care of customers. I really love the analogy that Richard Branson has talked about related to taking care of his employees. And I'll paraphrase it for you here today. But his attitude within the Virgin Group is that you take care of your employees first. And when you take care of your employees, they take care of your customers. And when your employees are taking care of your customers are taking care of you. And so there's this great virtuous cycle that can come into play with executives that really understand that employee experience and their customer experience are not competing. It's not a zero-sum game of fighting for budget for one or the other. It's about taking care of the employees in a way that they feel like they're thriving and love what they do. And then they take that great energy and pay it forward in their interactions with your customers. Let's talk more about how to advance that employee experience agenda. Most of you have executive teams who feel like this is important, which means there's some level of buy-in for getting something done. And I want to give you some practical steps that you can take to take the energy that you do have there and bring it forward. The first is it's very essential to know what you're shooting for, and that means developing an employee value proposition. Whoops, wrong button there. Hold on. That was sort of weird. We'll go back. There we go. All right, let's keep going. This is the definition of an employee value proposition, an EVP. Kind of wordy, but I think each of these elements is important. It's a set of benefits, rewards, and values that are unique to your organization. Those are offered in exchange for the employee's skills, their experience, and their expertise. It's a way of level setting more than anything else, so that the employee understands what they receive for working with your company. And I'm at an age where I'm used to that being defined primarily in terms of payroll, but more and more we're learning that the employee value proposition needs to encompass other dimensions. So let's find out what you have in place today. How many of you have an employee value prop already established and defined in your organization today? I think there should be a poll for this. There it is. Okay, this is great. This is great because this is what we're going to talk about. It's how to develop one. It looks like those that are attending today, most of them don't have one already established. So here are some practical steps that you can take. Let me share the results here. All right. So first things first, you're going to need the right information. There's really no substitute for talking to people. You're going to want to talk to your existing employees as well as business leaders. And you're going to ask them questions like, what do you think makes our company special? Why should employees work here rather than anywhere else? What are the elements that, as an organization, we provide that create loyalty among our employees that other organizations don't provide? And any other questions that you might consider relevant to helping you understand what's impactful in your organization. Within all of that data, there are going to be some high impact, some very engaging elements. You won't be able to include every single one of these in your employee value proposition. So look for the elements that combine this unique mix of the great opportunity that working at your organization provides for employees, the mission itself, the mission of the company, and why that mission matters, the values, your value statements. And I hope all of you have company values that are clearly defined and communicated to your employees. And then the direct benefits. And that can include things like paying very well or a commitment to vocational training or other elements like that. Once you have that set of high impact elements for your company, it's time to craft it in compelling language. This is super important, and it's a step that I think too many organizations overlook. In order to have an effective employee value proposition, it has to encompass what you do, but be simple enough that people that aren't really very familiar with your company, like prospective hires, for example, can digest that information and be inspired by it. So you want an employee value proposition that helps existing employees and future employees. And then thirdly, one that will help be an effective decision-making tool as well. Because once you've identified the unique mix of elements that make working at your company wonderful, when prioritizing where to spend your money and time as an HR leader, or for the business leaders themselves, the executive team, how to spend their time, they can use that employee value proposition as a decision filter. There are always going to be things that there isn't money or time to invest in related to your employees. But if you focus your energy on the things that align with your value proposition, that will build credibility and trust among your employees, that you walk the walk as well as talk the talk. The next element is to engage your stakeholders. I very purposefully included the crafting of language before this next step, because your stakeholders themselves are going to need an anchor point. You may have pulled some of them early on to identify some of the potential elements of an employee value proposition. You're going to want to return to them with your crafted statement and seek a diverse set of input. Pay attention to those that have been around for a long time. These are the folks that probably embody what your true employee value proposition is more than any other, by virtue of the fact that they've been there for so many years. You're going to want to find stakeholders who not only like the value proposition that you've defined, but that are influencers in your organization. Once you have one of these, you want to make sure it's really well socialized. It's no different than your company mission or your company values. So find stakeholders who are likely to act as champions for your employee value proposition, and find ways to recognize and reward them for making an effort to share it and evangelize it across your organization. This is such an important step to crafting a great employee experience. It's really the first step, because this is what's going to help you define where your employee experience investment is going to go. The third step here is to choose the right technology partner. You've got your employee value prop in hand, and you can start to evaluate technology vendors who are going to help you operationalize it. Your employee value prop is the unique mix of benefits and values that your company provides, and there will be technology vendors there to support any initiative under the sun. So the ones that you've identified as most important for your business are the ones that you're going to want to focus on first. But there are some pitfalls here. There are a couple of landmines when evaluating technology partners that you're going to want to be aware of. The reason these landmines exist is because, as I mentioned earlier, the digital employee experience category in software is still pretty loosely defined. And so this isn't quite as simple as buying payroll software or buying a CRM off the shelf, where the category's been defined and you can rely on all of the vendors to pretty much have that nailed. In this world, and in the employee experience world, many technology vendors are still trying to figure it out. Today, you get a couple of bad options as the dominant ones. So you're going to want to really watch out for this. Option A, many of you or all of you may have an HCM or an HRIS product already. Those products have been in use for decades now, and they perform an important function inside of HR. The differentiating element, and the reason why you need to watch out for this, is because HRIS tools weren't built for employees. They weren't originally built around delivering on your employee value proposition. They were built to make the HR function work, including compliance. And so they have tools for things like benefits enrollment and performance management. And you might find, or maybe you personally felt, visiting the HRIS and taking care of employee work like that is kind of like a visit to the dentist. Like, you need to do it. You need to get in there and update your benefit elections and so forth. But it's not exactly the happy place at work. It's not the water cooler. And digital employee experience is that. It's the online water cooler in a sense. And so you be wary of HRIS providers who are offering to throw on modules related to things like recognition and goals as your solution, because their products just weren't built to solve the employee experience problem from the start. The other thing you want to watch out for is this idea of disconnected point solutions. As I mentioned, there are tech companies willing to provide software on almost any initiative under the sun. In fact, when polled, we did a survey, I think this one came from Gartner, a survey of companies investing in their employee experience. And we found that the average number of point solutions purchased for employee experience was 6. So 6 or more technology point solutions for different initiatives. And that's a real challenge because every time you buy a new point solution, as I'm sure you know, you've got to figure out sign-on. You've got to figure out loading your org chart into the new solution and synchronizing the data. Employees themselves feel that frustration. They don't like having to hop between all the different systems. In fact, when polled, 84% of employees, so even more than the number of business leaders, say that the most important thing to them in an employee experience platform is that there's just one, at least one front door. There's one town square, one water cooler that they go to, so that as new initiatives are brought online by the HR organization or by the business, they already know how to take advantage of them, how to see them, and how to get the benefit and how to get the benefits from them. It's super, super important. So those are two elements for you as you think about technology partners that you need to really watch out for. You'll find that this is a good indicator within your own organization of where you are in your employee experience vision maturity, because the first step in the journey is that desire to do something like, okay, let's roll out a reward program, or let's roll out a travel benefit, or let's roll out, it's kind of one at a time. Those initiatives are sort of ad hoc and they relate to specific tasks or specific tools. It's sometimes better than nothing, but it's the kind of a lower level of maturity around employee experience. It's kind of like this. You've got a beautiful home on one side. That was your first initiative and your first investment. And then the next year you want to do something else for employee experience. So you start all over and you go find a different vendor. And then hopefully your IT team knows how to knock down the wall between the two sides. But very quickly it turns into something that's not very appealing, a not very appealing place for employees to spend their time. So last cautious comment here related to vendors. And technology companies like Motivosity can fall victim to this too. Many vendors are going to try to sell you on the features of their product. And it's tempting to cross shop when you're looking at technology partners based on feature sets too. That's a natural way to think about it. But the reality is you're looking for a solution to deliver a great experience. You're not looking for a set of features. We like to say in the software world with this that people aren't looking for a quarter when they buy a power drill. They're not looking for a 1/4 inch drill. They're looking for a 1/4 inch hole. Right? The solution is what matters. And in this case, the solution is employees who are more connected to each other, more connected at work, more loyal, and so forth. So you can use this as an indicator as you evaluate different vendors. Check to see if they're talking to you in terms of solving the employee experience problems you have, or if they're mostly interested in rattling off a set of features. The last element I want to talk about related to this is the measurement side. Once you've got your employee value proposition in place, you've engaged your stakeholders, you've identified technology partners who you believe can help you advance, it's time to measure the results. At Motivosity, we have a methodology. We call it the MV6. There's 6 key questions for employee engagement. And we organize them into these 3 categories: relationships, culture, and outcome. Under relationships, we measure and poll on how people feel connected to their team and the quality of the relationship they have with their manager. We know that when people exit their organizations, the most common thing that they report positively about is the people that they knew, and the most common negative is their manager. So the 2 relationship questions capture the ends of the polls on that particular dynamic. Within culture, the most important question is if they feel appreciated. People feeling recognized and appreciated at work is the number 1 predictor of loyalty. And the other important culture question, which measures both that people know your company values as well as they adhere to them, is that employees agree with and live by those values. And the third is the outcomes, ultimately what you're looking for out of all of this. With positive relationships and positive culture, are employees reporting that they would not take another job for 10% more money? This is a loyalty question. You know, in organizations where people are thriving, a minority will report that they would leave even for a raise. And that last outcome, so critical, is the employee net promoter score question, right? That they would refer their friends or colleagues, they would refer others to work at your organization. When organizations roll out a mature employee experience initiative, they see incredible results. This is a long-term study, a 5-year study done at Motivosity of Motivosity customers, measuring the results of the MV6. And you can see how dramatic the improvements can be over time, where loyalty to the organization can go up by 70%. The feeling of connection can go up by almost 60%. And the recommendations themselves, the lifeblood, the ENPS score can go up by almost 40% over time when people feel like they're more connected to each other. So my last sort of parting thoughts for you is this has been about getting started with your employee experience journey, is that it's okay to appreciate that it takes time. It's hard to eat this whole elephant at once. We talked about the starting point of it, which is these ad hoc transactions, ad hoc initiatives. Over time, you'll find that your processes will become more streamlined for identifying opportunities to improve your employee experience. When you partner with a technology vendor that can provide that digital town square, you'll be able to better integrate other parts of the employee life cycle, even parts that come from other systems, like maybe your talent management or recruiting systems. And ultimately, what employees are reporting that they want is they want their employers to appreciate that they have a work life and a home life. And there's a harmonization of that. You can call it work-life balance. In some organizations, that means keeping them very separate. In others, it means that they're very closely integrated. But a truly successful and mature employee experience vision involves a harmonization of people's work priorities and their life priorities. That's the ultimate goal that all of us are striving for. If you want more information about some of the things I've talked about today and about the value of building connection at work, there's a QR code, and I think Carly will have a way to get this information to you on that channel as well. As you get going, just keep in mind, even when you've got your EVP and even when you're mature in your implementation of it, it's not fixed. It's just like the pendulum. It swings back and forth. And so don't forget to leave room for adaptation in your employee experience and organizational factors that you may not be able to control. Employees will stay in your organization when they are paid fairly, of course, but when they receive so much more as part of their overall employee experience. So if you'd like to learn more about Motivosity, here's the QR code. We would love for you to watch an on-demand demo there and see how our effort to deliver a great digital employee experience has worked for our customers. And I wish you the best as you go on your own employee experience journey. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, Carly, I think we can switch over if there are any questions and kind of final thoughts as we wrap up.
Hi. Yes, we're back. Okay, Jesse, thank you so much for all of that information. I feel like there was, all of everything you said, but there was one part when you were talking about if they take care of their employees will take care of their customers. I want to be like louder for the people in the back, like such a good sentiment. Yeah. So thank you. We did have a few questions come in. And again, everyone here, if you have more questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. And these questions came in a little bit earlier, and I know you did dive into them, but first question was, what does EVP mean in HR? And again, I know you kind of dived into this, and these came earlier on, but if you want to give like a 1-sentence recap on what EVP means in HR specifically. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. Well, the employee value proposition is a business-wide proposition. It's kind of like your company mission, your company vision, or your company values. So it's more in that category. But I think it can be a useful tool for every department as well, especially in HR. If you have identified what your company employee value prop is going to be, the HR function plays a critical role in delivering on that value proposition. And it can be a useful tool in the same way as a decision filter for you in HR to have a statement that says, this is the way that our HR team helps deliver on the company's employee value proposition. I really encourage organizations of all sizes to establish one of these and then really hold to it just like they do their company values. That level of consistency and transparency is what employees in 2023 are craving. And so that will build credibility for you in your organization. And, we all watch Glassdoor, right? We all know that employees are very sensitive to us not walking the walk. So your employee value proposition clearly defined is an essential tool in your arsenal there, whether you're in HR or any other department.
I love that. Yeah. Great words of wisdom there. And then the other question that also came in earlier was, how do you create an employee value proposition, which I know you dived into. And also I'll just take this, and Jesse, you can recap if you'd like, but also we will send a follow-up email, one with the link to watch this webinar. If you want to, reiterate the information and take some notes and bring it on to the rest of your team, you'll be more than welcome. And in that email, I'll also provide a small recap of kind of the main points that Jesse hit on. So that will be what is coming to you post-webinar.
Awesome. Good.
Right. Well, with that, I think we will give you your time back, unless, Jesse, you have any other parting words.
Yeah, just in conclusion, to those of you, probably most of you are in HR. We know that that's a tough job, especially in 2023. And like you, we spend every day thinking about people at work and how we can help people at work be more successful, more effective, thrive in their lives, and contribute. And so just know that we appreciate you, that's a big responsibility. We see you, and we're glad that you spent the time today, and hope that, throughout your day and the week ahead, that you find ways to help your employees have a great experience at work. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.